again, we are projecting almost $1 billion in terms of gross booking value.
You have to give an advice to any students trying to move abroad for higher studies, what would that advice be?
Booking an accommodation well in advance is very.
We also realize that there's an opportunity as well, because obviously a lot of the other companies are on the back foot when such a time. I think as we have grown our ambition.
Welcome to Startup Story Spotlight. Today we are in conversation with the founders of Amberstudent, a leading platform that helps millions of students worldwide to find and book easy accommodation near their universities, or as they like to call it, a home away from home. With millions of students planning to study abroad, the student housing industry is of keen interest for the investors across the globe, and there is a huge opportunity. Ember is already present in over 450 cities across the globe and are projecting $1 billion gross booking value by 2024. This is a story of two engineering boys turned entrepreneurs who know how to get things done. And so without further ado, let us welcome our guests. Thank you so much, Madhur and Saurabh, for joining on this conversation. I really want to start this conversation by asking you, if you had to answer in one word, what do you think of the phase that Amberstudent is in right now? What is that one word you choose to go with?
Well, if you were to say, one word, I would say hustle. I think that has been, the sort of core way of how we do things, and probably this hasn't changed and this won't change. I think everyone here in the organization hustles a lot, and I think broadly speaking what that means is getting whatever it takes to get the job done. So I think that's what is the one word, if you ask.
Okay, Madhur, do you have, or will you go with the same word?
Yeah, it's the same for everyone, especially in the current phase, we are hustling a lot, building products for students, providing them superior service so that they have a hassle-free accommodation booking, and they can live in the country in a stress-free manner.
Understood. I was also actually going for the word unstoppable, because I was going through your stories and that did come to my mind, which is why I thought I'd ask you guys as well. But moving on, tell us what broadly does Amberstudent does. We know it provides student accommodation and it has started with other service as well, right? Amber Connect, Amber Plus. There's so many things that you guys are doing. Give us a brief description of all these services that you provide.
Right. So Lata, at Amber, we are building a full stack booking platform for student accommodations, helping them not only find and discover this accommodation, but book accommodations as well. And without the hassle of dealing with brokers or landlords, without having to do the cumbersome paperwork, and without having to, let's say, do the payments as well, which in a lot of cases is totally broken. So what we sort of envision is to make accommodation booking as seamless as doing a hotel booking on, let's say, booking.com, right? So that's the core idea of what we are building. I think it's very important because I think housing is one of the core fundamental human necessity which is there. I mean, in India we talk about roti kapda makan, that is very essential for your survival, and we have seen that in the last couple of years how convenient it has become to avail these services. We have seen platforms like Swiggy, Zomato, which deliver food to you. We have seen how e-commerce companies have made it easier to shop online. We have seen, let's say, apps like MakeMyTripBooking.com, which have made it very easier to, let's say, book flights or book hotels. But booking a rentals is still very, very, a very long and tough process. So we intend to make that process very easy, and students for us has been a good starting point, but obviously in the long run we can definitely expand this to a much wider generic rental use case as well.
Understood. Moving on, since we already know what Amberstudent does, it's quite a recognized name in the industry, one of the leading spaces for sure. Tell us how the journey has been so far from 2016 to now. Back then, when you used to get, I think when you first started this, in the first 24 hours, you received 1,000 plus requests, right, for accommodation, and that has gone to millions now. Revenues also jumped up from 10 employees to 600 strong. Tell us about this journey so far, how fruitful has been, how has it been for both of you?
Right. So Lata, I mean, obviously the journey has been, pretty interesting. When we started out, I think we didn't intend that this will scale so much. I think as we have grown, our ambitions have also grown. I think when we started, it was, obviously a very small team. We started back in 2016. Back then, I think we were just, focusing on the, Indian students which were moving to, let's say, UK or US. But so that was there in the initial 2-3 years. We did a lot of experiments. We had to go and onboard these supply partners in these countries. So that was very challenging. At the same time, we had to also scale our demand channels as well. So be it over we did a lot of marketing on communities like Facebook and WhatsApp groups. We scaled through content marketing. So a lot of in the initial phases, we had to sort of really hustle, and we had to do a lot of experimentation to actually crack that. So I think both on the supply side and demand side, between these 3-4 years, I think the team put a lot of efforts, and a lot of these experiments actually failed. But what they gave us is a very good learning in terms of what can work and what doesn't work. And I think what we have been doing over time is just doubling down on what has been working, and that has helped us scale over the years. And I think around 2019, 2020 is when we saw that we as a brand were also very sort of recognized in the student community. And that's for us, the strong brand play and word of mouth has also been a very key reason of why the scale has grown pretty rapidly in the last few years.
Understood. And talking about this student accommodation industry, what are different accommodations that are available to students when they move abroad? And how do you help them, let's say, being more cost effective, being hassle free? So please tell us about that.
Right. So Lata, students, if they are moving abroad, they would have multiple options to choose from. They would choose to stay in an apartment. They can choose to stay in university halls. They can choose to stay in off-campus student hostels as well. In all these types of accommodations, there can be en-suite accommodation where the bathroom is covered. The one would be non-en-suite, other would be studios, like shared studios. There are 6 to 7 types of accommodation options student can prefer. So based on student preferences, let's say certain students may have budget constraints, so we choose certain accommodations for them, like say non-en-suite or a shared studio for those students, and give those options to students. If students are comfortable with say higher prices, we would have studios which are very close to say universities or metro stations, etc., and those are given to students who are not that cost conscious.
Understood. And what is generally now the student mentality when they go abroad, how they choose their accommodation? What are the things they majorly look at?
Right. So we cater to student demand across the world. Talking about the Indian students now, they prefer accommodations to be near to their universities. They would want their personal space. They would want at least some community facilities available in the property, so that they can interact with their friends, their hostel mates, etc. At the same time, they would want a very comfortable and cozy place. That's a no-brainer. But if the students are booking early, they tend to get that. If students are booking pretty late, then they need to be restricted in terms of choices of accommodations.
And talking about the source markets, India has come up as one of the largest source markets. What are other source markets that have come up and that you see would definitely come up in the near future as well?
Right. So talking about Amber specifically, like, we cater to students from more than 50 plus countries. So India is one of the regions for us in terms of student demand. Like UK is a major student demand source for us. Then Nigeria is also coming up in last couple of years. Southeast Asia is always growing. So all these markets are definitely contributing to our growth.
Okay. I want to ask you this. So, you guys have projected to cross $1 billion of gross booking value by, I think, 2024. You're already doing 600 million over, right? What do you owe to? What is the basis of how you decided that projection? Is it the market demand? Is it the changing dynamics of the cultures of the world? What do you owe to that you went for that projection?
So Lata, it's been, in the last 2-3 years, we have grown, quite tremendously. Since 2020, the growth has been almost at a 3x pace year on year. And, from, back in 2020, in terms of gross booking value, we have scaled to almost $500-600 million, or that will be doing this year. So again, the projections are in line with, the historical growth that we have seen. And that has been, the sort of outcome. But I think what factors which have sort of caused this is obviously students from countries like India and the Southeast Asia preferring to go to these countries for their higher education, but also in terms of the supply for student accommodation that has been increasing as we speak year on year as well, right? So both a market from demand and supply has been increasing. And then from our perspective, we have obviously when we started, there were only specific countries that we were focusing, like UK, Ireland, and Australia. But over time, we have grown our the countries that we are serving. We are now catering to US and Canadian market as well. We have launched into Europe as well. So expanding to more locations and more geographies. So this is enabling and opening up a lot of more sort of pool of bookings that we can drive. So again, combined with the historical growth that we have seen, and the other is some new growth levers that we are pursuing in terms of new kind of geographies and new kind of supply as well, is what will enable the next leg of growth to happen. So again, we are projecting almost $1 billion in terms of gross booking value next year. But overall, what we are looking at is to scale almost from to 10x from this year in the coming 3-4 years. And I think there are some solid macros which are enabling us to do that.
Are you seeing investments also in that space growing way higher?
Yeah, so historically, there have been a lot of investment in terms of when you talk about companies investing into building these accommodations out. That's why the supply of student accommodation has dramatically increased, and that will the investment in this sector will continue to grow, because this is kind of an outlier in terms of how good a performance it is giving to the investors. So that's really piquing the investor interest in this sector, and that will sort of continue to sort of be there. And again, the other thing is that in this sector the demand is outstripping supply. So that way there is obviously there is a shortage of supply in certain markets. So those markets, there'll be continuously investments which will be happening.
Got it. Moving on, I really want to ask you this. We will go back to pandemic, right? That's when global markets were severely hit. And I'm sure you were also hit, but then you backed up and you went ahead and did a 3x growth, tripled your growth, right? How did that happen, guys?
Right. So I think in COVID, what we realize is that it's very important to I mean, survival is more important than growth, during times like COVID. So I think, during 2020, we obviously prioritized that, we should at least survive, if not grow. So I think, running the whole org in a very lean way, making sure that, we are not burning a lot of cash. So that was, the initial strategy that we put into place. But, at the other time, we also realized that, there's an opportunity as well, because obviously a lot of the other companies are on the back foot when such a time comes. So I think it was a very calculated and a very focused approach to sort of push the pedal in certain areas, and where we could grow, keeping the capital efficiency in mind as well. So I think in 2020 2021, I mean, I would say that we not only were able to save cost, run the org in a very lean way, but also by putting very focused efforts and investments in very focused areas, we were able to grow as well. So I think the key area has been to not sort of during that time we didn't launch a lot of countries. Instead, we just kept focusing on the core geographies, and so that has that really worked out for us.
Understood. And I think in one of your posts, I've also read where you mentioned that you basically double down on the geographies you were already present.
Yes.
That definitely seemed like a good strategy, and that's what's worked for you. Okay, I'll actually ask you a very fun question. Too much business, and then we'll also have some fun. So, guys, what is fun for you guys? How do you have fun, both of y'all?
Okay, so Madhur, you want to take it forward first?
Cool. I'll start. So in office, interaction with teammates is definitely fun. It's a very young team, very young and dynamic team. So every meeting is fun. So that is in terms of business, and obviously there can be some challenging projects. People here take it very, very positively, and that is once we complete those projects, it's a very, very happy and euphoric feeling. Apart from work, I like to travel, play with my dog, and participate in some sports. So that's how I personally have fun.
So Madhur, you said you like to travel, which has been so far your favorite city. I'm sure you've traveled so many places.
I would say London. London is my favorite city. Have been there a few times now, and been a fan of London.
Okay, understood. Saurabh, we also want to know what's fun to you as well.
Right. No, as Madhur rightly mentioned that, in office, it doesn't feel like work. So, it's not like that, you are, you would want to, let's say after work, you have that urge of, going somewhere. I think in office itself, we have a lot of fun because the people are very sort of, friendly in nature, and, it's like almost the same age bracket. It's not that, there is a very, huge age difference. So that way, I think office itself is fun. A lot of times, meetings or, whenever you're just talking to people, it's not only work, it's like a lot of other things that you talk about as well. But apart from work, I think, we tend to disconnect on the weekends, go out. Again, that outing could be anything. You go out for a walk, or maybe, just out for a trek. So, but I think the idea is to just go out, not, stay indoors. So that is that. And, otherwise, we play, I mean, I personally play a lot of football. So that also sometimes, keeps us busy, but pretty much that. And I think, if travel happens, that's a cherry on the cake.
Does football actually help you build strategies as well, since so much teamwork? And
I don't think so. We don't think of building strategies. It's a very casual, 1-2 hours of play.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just good to, I think for me, it's more like to be in shape than, putting some putting super competitive.
Oh, nice.
I think that's not the goal there.
Yeah, you can't be competitive everywhere. So
yeah, exactly. So I think it's more like chilled out and just have a good 2-hour game. So that's.
So do you win or do you not win?
I would say probably won much more than I think we lost in the last few games. But again, I don't.
Understood. I have one more question for you guys actually. Most of your 20s have went into building this, right? You're most probably 30 or over 30s. Do you think you would have had it another way? Because when you're building a company, at least in the initial years, there's so much that you have to commit to. There's so much that you have to give up, and there's so many responsibilities that you have to take up for your team members. Would you have it in any other way?
No, I think, looking back, Lata, it has, I mean, there is always a risk when you build a startup, that you put a lot of efforts, but the outcomes may or may not come. So I think, you after some time, initially you tend to, overthink and all, but I think after some time, you sort of, just let it be that, jo hoga wo hoga, right? So I think over a couple of, I mean, starting it's tough to adjust, because you are, again, you don't have a job, you don't have that security, but after some time I think you also get used to it, and after some time you also start having fun if things are working out. So yeah, I mean, it's been a phase for us where initially it was difficult, but over time, things got a bit, we got used to it, and it was okay to not have that feeling of insecurity. So that's how it worked out. But I think important part is that you really, I mean, if someone is doing this, they really know that it will be a very long and a very tiring and a very journey where you have to give it your all, and even after all that it might not work out. So if you're fine with that, probably then it makes sense. Otherwise, I think having a job is, again, that is also fine. I mean, that also has its pros and cons.
Badal, do you want to add anything to that? Because I saw,
I would say, thoroughly enjoyed my journey. Going back, if I have to start again, I would just give a suggestion to myself that uncertainty would be there. There would be some projects which may not work. Having 100% conviction there helps. So that would be my suggestion if I'm starting it again back in 20s.
Well, the boys grew up well. Then, okay, moving on, coming back to the business, broadly talking about the trends that you see coming up in this industry further, especially from an investment point of view, what would they be?
Right. So here, in terms of industry perspective, talking about the platforms, firstly, are you asking about the accommodation side or the platform side here?
I'm asking about the student accommodation side.
Yeah. So here, in student accommodation industry, it's a growing industry, and it's been an established industry in US, UK, Australia, Canada. And here, the private equity players are putting a lot of money. It's an asset class where, they are getting 20 to 30% yield as well, which is way higher compared to any other asset class they have. And it's a university linked asset, so there is a huge certainty towards this asset. And with the growth in student accommodation, so we are also thriving, where the supply is growing, student numbers are also growing, and it's a huge opportunity and huge market for us as well.
I want to talk about the community aspect of your platform as well. With any marketplace, any platform, you need to build a community. That is an essential way today. So what is, and I see Amberstudent doing a great job at, the efforts are clearly visible with everything that you've been doing on social media. It's out there. People can very clearly see it, what you've been doing. Tell us how. Give us some tips for anybody listening to this. What is the right way to build a community?
Right. So I think, Lata, for us, community was the, starting point. I mean, when we started out, students, we understood that student is an audience which is very, very connected to each other. They are, be it students of the same batch, they are very, they are on these platforms, let's say social media, and, they are interacting with each other, much, much more than compared to, let's say, any other person, right? And in a different age group. So that, was that students inherently are very social, and they are online as well. So that's why when we started, Amber as well, I mean, on the demand side, the go-to way of growing was to tap into the student community. So that we did through various channels, let's say on Facebook groups, on WhatsApp groups. There were these student communities where we could go and market Amber, and that provided us a very good initial growth back in the day. Then we also understood that students have a lot of these queries, and then we started launching our own groups. So we now operate around 20 to 25, I think more than that, in terms of groups, and there are roughly around 70 to 80,000 students in those groups, across those groups. So our team, we have our community management folks as well, who are sort of helping students which are part of these groups with any of their queries. So I think the broad idea behind, I think, for anyone to grow a community is provide some value and to the members of the community. And again, that could be through you sharing some content, or you answering their queries. So that is how it could, you have to focus on providing value. And then once you have enough members, I think a lot of that value can be provided by other members of the community as well. We have seen that a lot of times when a student posts these queries, there are other students which jump and help that student. So that's how this community grows over time. But what you have to understand is that it's a long process. It will take time. You cannot grow that community within, let's say, a day or a month or a year. It takes continuous efforts over a lot of years. So you have to be patient, but at the end, obviously, once your community scales, then it is a very significant aspect that can contribute to your growth.
Understood. And that is the community side. You also serve to the partners as well with Amber Connect, and there's so many other things that you're doing. So
Yes.
tell us about that aspect. Why should a property management team partner with you? What cost effectiveness or what benefits do they get by partnering with Amberstudent?
Right. So I think, Lata, what we understood, when we started out, is that we were solving for the pain points of the student, which is the demand side for us, or the tenant. I think, when we got deep into the sector, and, when we really sort of started going deep, I think what we understood is that the larger problem is in fact on the supply side, right? So I think, it's been a very conscious effort for us to solve for that as well. So when we generally talk about our customers, we not only say that the student side is the customer, but also the supply or the property manager is also our customer, right? So that's why we are building solutions which help the property owners run their whole operations in a much more efficient way. That involves a lot of different tools and products, and over time we would want to sort of solve a lot of their pain points. But what we have started with Amber Connect is essentially helping them gain visibility and insights into these students which are coming in. They can see what is the overall type of demographic of students who are booking, where they are coming from, how long they are booking. So each and every sort of important data which is again relevant for them is present in this dashboard. And the other thing is that we as a marketplace have grown a lot, and we have a lot of data which gets directly pushed into their system, and they are able to make a lot of decisions, be it in terms of price, pricing their properties, be it in terms of making sure what is the right occupancy rate. So all those decisions can now be made using data. So that is the first step that we are looking at. But overall, on the supply side, there are a lot of inefficiencies which are there in terms of the entire entire process, from the student coming in and discovering that accommodation, to student booking and then moving in and then moving out as well. So the entire life cycle is something that we'll be building solutions. But it's been we have just recently started with this, and overall the response that we are getting from supply partners has been pretty tremendous.
Great to know that. And what are the future plans, later plans that you can think of? Is it to become a leader in the student accommodation, which I'm sure that's on the list, but is it also to expand in other rentals as well?
So on the if you talk about supply side, I mean, there we are just going deeper and building more products and technologies. On the the demand side, I think again, as I mentioned, that student has been a starting point, but this platform can be scaled to a much wider use case as well. For example, working professionals seeking rentals. So that is a segment which can be unlocked.
Co-working spaces.
And then we have
co-living
seen,
spaces.
yes, then we have seen another segment where there are travelers looking or booking for long-term stays. So that is another segment that can be unlocked. So again, a lot of things which are out there, but I think right now the focus is to again scale in the student part, and just run experiments on the side and see how we can scale in these other segments as well.
Understood. I also want to ask you, but from a very global perspective, how do diplomatic relations between two countries affect the international student exchange for education and all sorts of that?
Right. Madhu, you want to?
Does it to any extent?
Right. So Lata, here there is a significant impact in terms of diplomatic relations between two countries. I'll give you an example. The relations between Australia and China got stretched a bit, or at times some relations can stretch. So it does have a impact in terms of student intake from that particular country to a destination country. So but overall, when we see as Amber business, so let's say if Indian student numbers going to Germany has decreased, you would see that increase happening in say US market or the UK market, because we are present in multiple regions, and we have multiple source countries. We hedge that risk significantly. If you see we are operating in 6 regions and 50 source countries, so that is close to 300 combinations which we have for the students demand and source region. And hence diplomatic relations happening for say 2 countries doesn't impact Amber as a business, but that does impact those 2 countries, be it source or destination.
One last question: what do you guys have to give an advice, if you have to give an advice to any students trying to move abroad for higher studies? What would that advice be?
Right, I would say firstly choosing the right university, and for that having good grades would be very important. Understanding about their own success stories would be important, and building SOPs and building connects in order to get to the university. That would be very, very crucial. Secondly, once the university aspect is done, booking an accommodation well in advance is very, very crucial. Normally students spend 2 to 3 years in a particular country for education, and in that 2-3 years they would want to stay as close to university as possible, as best accommodation as they can, so that they don't need to fret about all the maintenance queries, or travel related hassles, etc., and they can focus on their studies and play. That is the most important reason they came to that particular destination country. And at Amber we are enabling that they book everything in a hassle-free manner.
Okay. Amber had to be there, of course. How did that, I know we talked about how it started, but what was that first conversation that got you started on this journey in the first place?
Well, I think when we first met, Madhur was not looking for a co-founder. I think it's about building a good network, be it in terms of friends. I think just having a lot of in your college, talking to a lot of people, not just sitting in your room and wasting your time on, let's say, just playing computer games or something like that. I think instead go out, meet people, make a lot of friends, expand your network, because I mean, you might not be doing startup or thinking of doing a startup at that time. You would probably be thinking of doing that after graduating a couple of years down the line, and then you might reach out to these folks that you were there in your network, because that's how I and Madhur also connected back after we went out of college, were in our respective jobs, but when we decided to sort of start up, and that's when we got we reconnected and thought whether we could work together or not. So I think the focus should be of let's say, finding a co-founder, because again, you might be doing a startup in the future, but it's more about just building your network, talking to as many people as possible, maybe attending, conferences, events. There are a lot of these events which happen nowadays in colleges, which are towards entrepreneurship. So I think that could be a good start. And then rest is obviously luck, where how when you end up as a co-founder, that is something that is obviously you cannot tell from day one.
Were you guys like able to click right away? Were you able to align with each other right away when you probably met, when you started talking about this?
So I think we were very good friends initially. So we had known 4 or 5 years prior to we coming together as working in a co-founder setting. So we had that sort of understanding and comfort which two friends have, right? So that was a good starting point. And over time, when we started as co-founders, I think there was a clear sort of synergy in terms of what let's say I am good at and what Madhur is good at, which was very complementing. And that is that helps a lot, where it's not that there is very clear distinction in terms of what one does and what the other person does. So that is something that you have to figure out, talk to your co-founder and see where each of a person's strength lies, and then just focus that that person is contributing that to that particular vertical. So that's how we have managed to work together in a very efficient way.
Did you also guys like get consensus on most of the decisions, or are you guys mostly thinking differently?
Yeah,
So normally
most
we do.
yes.
Normally we do. At times when we don't, we discuss it further, and we eventually reach on the consensus.
Sweet co-founder story for sure. But that's great to know. And yeah, lovely to know, guys. That's such a nice story. Friends turn into co-founders. We're still friends. But great. Thank you so much for doing this conversation. We'll wrap it here, and all the best for Amberstudent. Hope you touched the great heights that you always wish to achieve. And for everybody else, please tune in to the conversation. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.